So Greg, how did you start this monster, man? How did you start Fab Fours? What inspired you? How old were you? Tell us your story.
The story. Well, I gotta decide how much to abbreviate that because we don't have that much time. It goes all the way back to Jakarta, Indonesia. People like it, so I'll tell that little tidbit. You know, when I graduated from A&M, I wanted to live in Perth, Australia. So I took a job with an oil company. I actually imagined having a little Toyota Hilux, going to the beach on the weekends in Perth, Australia. That was my vision.
That sounds incredible.
Did. Got there, bait and switch, sent me to Jakarta, Indonesia. After 2 weeks, so I never got a Hilux, I never saw the beach, didn't do anything fun in Perth actually. And I actually couldn't have told you where Jakarta was on the globe prior to that. And if you don't know, so I grew up in Houston, Texas, Jakarta. Literally, you couldn't be further away on the planet. I mean, it was like 30 hours flying time via Singapore, wherever. I mean, the far reaches of the planet. Very underdeveloped still. I mean, Jakarta's the type where you got rags and riches, and ultimately, I hated being there. That's the summary of the story. Like, what the hell am I doing here? I'm 23 years old. All of my friends, you know, have a new job out of school, living it up, no responsibilities, lots of cash, and I'm over here trapped in Jakarta. Well, I kind of got past the self-loathing, back to my passion. I love to off-road. I'm here, find off-road. That will set you free. So, went looking around, and sure enough, found some cool dudes. That, you know, even to this day, you'll see like Fred Williams, one of the editors from the magazines, going over there for the Sumatra Challenge and some of those cool things. So I met these groups, started going on a couple runs, and realized like, man, this is like 10 years behind where we were in the US. Meaning like a spring over conversion seemed pretty like, this is new. Like, what? We don't even do that anymore. Like, you haven't even thought about coilovers and four links, like a spring over. That's awesome. So being young, ambitious, and thinking like, dude, a business owner never has this, a crystal ball. Yeah. Like, I'm not gonna skip to where we are right now. I just gotta stay 1 year ahead of all these evolutions. Yeah. Very simple plan. Well, I started writing a business plan. And then on my venturing out, I met another Texan in a bar, sat down across from him, had never, in Indonesia. He was an ex-oil well firefighter, like for Red Adair, like the movies. He was a Red Adair oil firefighter back in the day. After 30 minutes, the guy goes, hey, if you got the plan, I got the money. And so Fab Fours was born in Jakarta, Indonesia. So I quit my job, moved into his house. I brought a buddy over from Texas. He brought a buddy up from Australia. And so there were 4 of us. That's kind of how it all, you know, over a game of pool, trying to name the company Fab Fours, fabrication, 4-wheel drive. Great learning experience. I mean, my whole time there, most white people, also referred to as bules over in Indonesia, are expatriates, normally British, Australian, very few Americans, but they come there, you know, as experts in their fields, whether it be IT, in my case, oil and gas. And so there's a reason, and most of these expatriates are industry veterans, and they've got the companies paying hazard pay, drivers, homes, all this stuff. Little old Higs, I had nothing. So I just lived indigenous. I had a scooter, like the other 30 million people that lived in Jakarta, and would just bomb around doing that, and had a little off-road shop. Unsuccessful, I might add. I bit off way more than we could chew as far as creating a market out of thin air over there. But the experiences were amazing. No replacement for that. My old man called it my MBA, was being over there, trying to run that business in that corrupt environment at that young age. And so that was just out of college, so 23, 24, and 25, basically, I was over there. And one of the things, like bumpers has been a passion of mine since high school. I was drawing bumpers, having a custom welder do it. I think there's a pic you're gonna throw in here in the editing. And so with that, I just loved it. You know, it's right in your face. It kind of defines the character of that vehicle, and it's yours. You know, you can own that. Like, where'd you get it? I designed it. Just always loved bumpers. And so in Indonesia, the vehicles that they had were actually similar, and there was a company making bumpers in Thailand So I was like, I'll import bumpers. I'll be that guy down here and I'll bring them down, and that's the stuff I know. You know, lift, wheels, tires, bumpers. Start promoting that here like a Full Wheel Parts of the day back in Houston.
Yep.
The type of off-road shop I knew. Well, a couple trips to Thailand, which was its own crazy adventure. Also being a young guy going there. Incredible. I've got some just memories burned into my brain of things I wouldn't even know how to get there again if I tried today. But you just stumble on these things like beachside boxing match, you know, Muay Thai.
Do you think that passion played a big role in this? Having like the passion, the dream? Or what was what was it that was driving you?
Well, I was an
this whole
adventurer, but I think some entrepreneurialism ran in my blood just watching my dad build his business. You know, he took a flyer and started a company with 2 guys that they grew huge. But I watched that evolution, you know, when he'd have employees over to the house and we'd build bookshelves for the office. So I kind of got that feeling of watching my dad as a leader and kind of the autonomy and freedom of that. And then in my later years, seeing his financial success, you know, it kind of went hand in hand. Although above all that, he'll tell you to this day, like, I'm not a great rule follower anyways, and I don't like being told what to do by someone unless I really respect their position, which is part of why I was actually on civilian prep to go to West Point. My dad had gone to West Point. I love the idea of West Point because you get to drive Hummers and tanks and shoot guns, all the things. You know, I was an Eagle Scout. I love off-road and outdoors. But then I realized that's a tiny piece they do in the summer. Like the other 90% of the year is people hazing you and giving you a hard time, you know, especially when you're a freshman and all that. And I'm not down with that. Like hazing is indicative of what I thought I would hate in the workplace, where someone lords their authority over you that didn't earn it. And because of the construct, you're forced to just bite your tongue and take it. I don't like that. I believe in a meritocracy, best player plays, and I always had faith in myself. So inevitably, it just seemed that's my path. I was going to want to have my own business. And I've instilled a lot of those kind of cultural items into this business. I love that word. Mary Bruce, my old VP of Ops, taught me that. I thought she invented it, but now I've heard it all over the place. Meritocracy, though, is perfect. That is my belief. She, by the way, was a 72-year-old woman that was probably 90 pounds wet. And here she is bossing around these tatted up dudes you see out here building bumpers. You know, you're the best, you're the best. Yep. You know, what does a VP of Ops at a manufacturing plant look like? I don't care. You don't look like anything. I don't care about race, age, gender, nothing. Merit. If you got the goods, you can do anything at Fab Fours. I've always believed that. And so I think that was some of my concern about entering corporate America, and I was going to take a chance regardless. So when that opportunity hit, found the investor in the bar, opened the shop, made a trip to Thailand. Basically what happened in Thailand was going, yeah, this guy's got a world-class manufacturing operation. I mean, it was sweet. Like, you could eat off the floors in this thing. The guy that was running it kind of married into some money, and I feel like they just had a blank check to make a dream factory, because that's what it looked like. And so I'm seeing all this like state-of-the-art equipment, super well laid out place, and then the bug started to hit me, where it's like, man, I could manufacture bumpers in Thailand to import to the US and have my own brand. Yep. And even back then, as it is today, you know, there's a lot of made in the USA pride, which I share, very patriotic. But I think because of the opportunities my family provided me with so much travel when I was younger, there's a lot of people that say that have never left their state or even got on a plane. And I was coming from the mindset, just like I hate racism, you know, patriotism can take on that form if you start to think they can't do it better. Than why not? Why can't a plant in Thailand be the best at making a bumper? So I feel like I had more of a worldview that, back to hating racism, like I can't wait till this world's so tiny that us going over to a Thailand or an Australia feels like me bombing over to Texas. Just hop on a plane. You know, it's all gonna get there when travel gets faster, the melting pot takes over. And I like to think that we're a generation that can really start to embrace that And I had the worldview to go, hey, I'm not scared. I'm gonna take advantage of that manufacturing to deliver the best part to my customers and build my own brand. Again, Higs thinking. It's a good plan. Had no means to deliver that. I didn't know what I was doing at all. How to manufacture, period, let alone manage an outsourced manufacturing entity on the other side of the planet, or to build a brand, or any of the above. But I was committed anyways.
And at that point, you were trying to do it all alone.
So essentially, at that point, it made sense, like, this shop in Jakarta, this isn't going anywhere. That's too hard. That's a lost cause. But it was a gateway that introduced me to this, which put the spark in me to have my own bumper brand. So the idea was shut that down, actually pay back that investor. And at that time, my family did step in to help on the investment side. You know, my dad came and saw that we had created a actual bumper in the flesh on a table. And that was kind of his moment to go, wow, okay, that looks like a real product. Like, you're not just making all this stuff up. And so it made enough sense, and the scope seemed small enough at the time we could handle it. So at that point, I felt lucky enough to look at the map of America and go, where shall we be? Because if I'm gonna make in Thailand, and I was ambitious, I'm gonna sell nationwide. I'm not gonna do this sell local, you know, go hang flyers on shops. Like, this is nationwide. So make here, sell here, I can live anywhere I want. So I chose Durango, Colorado. Awesome little place to live. Terrible place to do business. But it was gonna work if I never touched the goods. That is a pipe dream. You've got to touch the goods. That was a failed concept because you can't be such a little guy with no actual market share or brand and manage global sourcing. There's economy of scales there that just don't make sense. Things are shipped in container loads. You would have to have a forecast. You'd have to have numerous containers on the water, which takes working capital and a demand forecast. We had none of that. So within a short amount of time, and my last flight to Thailand, I'll never forget this. I can see it like it was yesterday. We had all the pricing set up. Out comes a tray by his assistant with some big old Singha beers on it, like a little celebratory, and they about doubled the price. So it torpedoed everything. All of a sudden it made it completely infeasible to source from there. And we just had to get on the plane with our tail between our legs and reset the whole strategy. Even though we'd already committed to Durango, rented a building, had designed a bumper that had already shipped to Thailand. You know, that was our prototype for them to work off of. It was a full abort pivot, but we're not gonna work, you know, change paths at this point. So now I was really in it. I really need my family's investment. And the strategy was basically, okay, well, I was already committed to driving around this country to build a network of stores via sales. Well, if I'm already in all these major metroplexes, I can also look for job shops to source from. And I thought that gave me a huge advantage because rather than, you know, well, I was born here, raised here, I'm gonna make here, that's very limiting. You're not necessarily gonna have the best partner. Whereas I felt like, hey, I'm in San Diego this week. I got to see what manufacturing looked like. I'm in Minneapolis next month. What's manufacturing there? Denver here. So that's what we ended up with, a network of job shops around the country. Also a terrible strategy in hindsight because one, we were spreading out, so we had diversification in the sourcing, but also back to the economy of scale, like you couldn't bring enough volume in to be that relevant in that entity. So my vision, what I love for this, my industrial distribution background and the theory was, well, if I had multiple sources and at each one of these sources, I was only 10 to 15% of their business. If I doubled my business, it's a bump in the road for them. They don't care. I just went from 10 to 20%. They can handle that with some overtime, but I just doubled. So that was some good foreshadowing. This is long before I had my own plant where I can tell you exactly how hard doubling is. Doubling is a nightmare. So the idea was sound to have that scalability because I always dreamt big. I had visions of Fab Fours literally taking over the entire aftermarket. And I thought I could. This is one of the points I want to make to the viewers here. You know, if you're thinking about starting a business, you know, should I do this? Should I take the leap? I think it's super important to have some, what do you stand for? What is your core belief that's going to differentiate you? And like many in this industry, we start as hobbyists, enthusiasts. We love it, it's our passion, and everybody dreams, man, I wish I could do this for a living. Well, buying parts and buying parts and buying parts, it's frustrating in this industry because there's no regulation. You know, an entity doesn't get dinged if they told you they'll ship in 2 weeks and it comes in 15, right? There's no penalty from the Better Business Bureau. There's nothing to that manufacturer except maybe a little bad blood online. And say it shows up and half the bolts are missing, then what? No penalty. What happens if it doesn't fit? What if the brackets the holes have to be wallowed? Nothing, no penalties. Yet that was very common because you've got a hobbyist turned business in this enthusiast aftermarket where the barrier to entry is low, and really you don't have to be that good. You just have to be not horrible to somewhat succeed. And so enthusiasts like yourself, myself, we kind of bore the brunt of that. We're going to be the ones waiting a long time, getting missing parts, running to the hardware store. And so I felt like, I'll divulge this. My old man with his 2 partners, they went from 3 people to over 7,000 employees. A billion annual company, massive entity.
Doing your father's business.
Doing his offshore oil and gas. So engineering company out of Houston, Texas. Well, I watched at every step of that. I mean, their original goal was a 40-man engineering company. So to watch it blossom into that thing, which was an incredibly wild ride that he went through. It's absurd. He's the smartest guy and my best friend that I know to this day, lives 10 minutes away. Well, I thought, I've got this guy on my board. You can't go buy that kind of help or mentorship. And I'm gonna take an off-road aftermarket company, but run it like a real business. All these other ones, it seems, are run like hobby businesses. And I'm gonna run an empire of Fab Fours done the right way, leveraging experience that he had and just the learning by osmosis I've done over the years, watching him build that. So that was the plan. That's what we started doing out of Durango. And my job originally, and still a passion of mine, is selling. And it's easy to do that when you believe in your message. So quality, on time. It's basically what I was going to sell.
I love that slogan, by the way.
Yeah. I mean, on day one, we didn't have a better mousetrap per se. The bumper wasn't inherently better, but the promise was quality on time. So if you believed me and you're used to this industry, those are 2 things you've come to not expect is quality on time. You expect it to have a scratch, to be missing parts, and to be late. That's just how it is. Go buy something for your Tacoma tomorrow. I promise you. Go buy an exhaust for it, get some headers for it. Anything along those lines, expect that irritation. So when I was pulling around this country, which was insane, sadly missed my daughter growing up basically, because at the time, I would get in that trailer and just tow. And this was before kind of smartphones, GPS. I'd actually go to the yellow pages in a hotel. I'd take those next 14 truck accessories, map it out the night before, and just bang them out. 10, 14 a day, basically walking in cold saying, would you like to buy a watch? Only at the time it was buy into my bumper company. And jobbers back then, there were buy-ins. You want 10% discount, 15%, 20%, you gotta buy 10K, 15K, 20K. And mind you, I'm 24. And you've never heard of my brand before, and I roll up in my truck and trailer, and I'm asking you for $25,000, believe in my brand, quality on time. That sounds like a stretch, but apparently I was believable enough, and it worked.
And did you already have this factory going, or you were doing kind of like outsourcing the whole thing?
And that was disastrous because we were having to bring the bumpers to Durango rather than drop ship them because we couldn't count on the quality. So we had to see it and touch it and do the final grinding and powder coat local. And now, mind you, at that time, I still have this old ATV trailer at my house. We were pulling bumpers on an ATV trailer up the road to get powder coated because we're talking 2 or 3 bumpers a day back then. But I pulled around the country, year and a half, 3 different buildings in Durango, and we had built a network of over 400 jobbers. So jobber direct business, 400. And the best jobbers in the country. Because really they had to be. 1, that's who I wanted to work with. 2, those are the only ones that could afford to play at this level. So it's awesome. To this day, we're still very loyal. And I can tell you the names of the first guys that believed in us, because it's awesome. And if I see them at shows now, it's still a warm embrace because we've come a long way. But that $25,000 purchase still gives me goosebumps, you know, just thinking about them taking that chance on us. Well, we were outgrowing Durango. Couldn't do it. I wanted to actually build a building there, but the commerce around there, they just didn't want it. It's more of a tourist environment, so they don't want industrial manufacturing. They don't want big truck traffic. They want nice restaurants and skiing up in Pagosa and that type of thing. Fine, don't blame them, but I had to go. So I looked at Salt Lake City, Denver, and Charlotte, just because my parents had moved here. So my dad had been flying over, you know, once a month or every 2 months, but it was hard to get as much help and support that I needed with such sporadic visits. And I was growing the business, it was working. So I was all for getting more of his help and support. And then looking over here at available resources, buildings, workforce, you know, it seemed like, again, I can be anywhere because Central seems cool, but when you're talking freight, it's like you're even here, whereas if you're East Coast, it's way expensive west, but super cheap east. I think it all averaged out. So took the leap of faith and came here. That puts us at summer of '07. And we rented a place, 80,000 square feet, actually quite big, twice what we ended up buying down in Lancaster. And the initial mission for a year and a half was bring manufacturing to 100 miles. That's a big effort. So we had to shut down Denver, Minneapolis, others, and bring it all to Charlotte, get some consistencies in design, try to keep pushing our brand. And going into 2008 is when we, as a bumper company, pioneered wholesale distribution. Prior to that, the industry was just too small. There wasn't enough volume in it to ever have scale for a distributor to be interested enough or be able to carry appropriate inventory that would have enough turns.
Dude, and that's crazy that it happened right at the start of the recession.
Yeah, well for us though, we were growing. So we were like Inc. 5,000 during the recession. Because when you're tiny, going from $100 to $200 is easy. That's a lot different than 10 million to 20 million. So we didn't know how bad it was because we hadn't experienced good. So we just grew right through the recession. And that was actually the end of needing any investment from my family. So that was pretty cool. Really, it was from the start of '06, '07 and half of '08. I needed some family income. But from 2008 all the way to present, we funded the entire growth of this thing out of cash flow. And then traditional bank financing for like a building and equipment. But it's been a heck of a ride. So we moved from renting that building, which was quite expensive, up in Pineville. We purchased down in Lancaster and put our first piece of equipment in, a plasma table and a press brake in 2010. So 2010, we started cutting metal.
So 3 years later,
Yep.
2007.
Yep, so we were using the outsource model, building bumpers still, adding some scope in our shop, driving them down the road in a box truck, powder coating, very typical to the bumper industry still today outside of Fab Fours. Then we brought in that equipment, had all the troubleshooting to learn through that, and just kept going one step at a time, brick by brick, getting better and better and stronger and adding equipment until we starting to outgrow that facility. It was only 33,000 square feet. And so I looked and, you know, I wanted to find a place in the next 2 years. And of course, as luck would have it, I found this building like 7 days later, way sooner than we needed it. And it's amazing. You know, 146,000 square foot. It was on 80 acres. They wanted $2.5 million for it. Well, I ended up negotiating it down. Berkshire Hathaway had this place, so I like to think I beat Warren Buffett on this deal. Got it for $980. So typical Higs negotiating tactic, which is not negotiating. I pick a price I want, and that's it. Either buy it or don't buy it. I don't care. It doesn't hurt my feelings. But They said no. They came down to 2.3. I said 980. Said 2. Said 980. Said 1.7. I said 980. It was just gonna be 980 or never. I don't care. Sell it to somebody else. Well, the year was ending and they accepted. So we ended up buying the building and then actually not moving into it for almost 2 years. So I moved sales and marketing over here.
Did you at least rent it, or you just?
Nope. I just moved sales and marketing here so that nobody comes steal the copper out of it, which is quite awkward because there was 4 people working here in this entire massive place. We actually had the studio all the way back in building 3 because it had the one drive-in door for a car. But continued growing. I mean, we were almost double digits every year for a decade, which is crazy. You know, sometimes 25s and 30% growth, but even 12s and 15s, it's a lot year over year to just hang on to that wild ride. And I think on that timeline, it goes to 2015 as outsourcing the last thing we ever did. So we became completely in-house, could bend tube, cut sheet metal, package, powder coat, everything. That is a game changer. That is when I think we really started to propel. We'd already got into wholesale distribution, and now we controlled all the scope to be the leading bumper supplier, and profitably. Because mind you, I delivered quality on time, sacrificing profit. You can't have it all, you know, but to make sure a customer got the right part, the last thing I worried about was how much money we made. So it was just enough to fund the growth and to break even. I was a young guy just loving this. You know, it's my passion, designing bumpers, building this business, taking care of customer. So we did that and then moved the entire facility over here. Now we've been in this building for 2 or 3 years and love it. This is home. It's got expansion, long ways to go. We did a $4.5 million CapEx round for upgrading the lasers and the powder coat and everything just in 2018. Rolled through 2019 with some bumps, and then now hit 2020's been an adventurous start. But the beauty is, yeah, you can't unseat the king. We own the bumper space from a breadth of catalog. You know, there's a lot of small niche bumper guys that have loyal followings, they make great parts, and it's perfect. You've got to have that ongoing innovation and that passion out of those owners for what they're pursuing. So I want to support them where I can. But from a large scale, supporting fleets of trucks and being first to market on new trucks and just having that predictability to service companies that are maybe going to build Gladiators that are on the lot, ready to roll out finance, we're your guy for that. So we built the scale, we've got the toys, we've got the processes set up, and we're just rolling. So the future is a little bit untold, but my passion, I get to spend most of my time in that now. It's all on the product development. So challenging the team, but also figuring out what's on the next frontier as far as armor. Are we going to diversify out of armor? Where do we go? And I love it. Sketch it, they bring it to reality, and then to see our parts on trucks around the country is the most rewarding you could ever ask for. I'd say I never did doubt myself.
No?
Because...
Not even for a bit?
Now, I could doubt the trajectory of where Fab Fours was going, but its existence, I did not doubt, because I've always felt like before there's no Fab Fours, I'm the last guy. You're gonna stop me from cutting a piece of metal and welding it myself? That's a long way, like wherever we've been. And there's been some shitty nights. I've been waiting on a custom critical FedEx truck, sleeping on the rafters till 3 in the morning to take delivery of that. Just hemorrhaging money. But to get those bumpers to customers we had let down, those are a dark time. But it doesn't feel like I'm going out of business because I'm doing the right thing. Like, yeah, were we late? But if I tell this guy what I did for him, he's gonna be like, damn, like that's ridiculous. So you can turn a negative into a positive. So as long as you're not out, you're still in, you keep fighting. I never felt like there was an opportunity for it to go away. And you know, there's been dark times being, you know, employment suing, you know, you start to get too big, you get some of that stuff. And that'll take a toll on you where you're like, man, look what I try to do. I love my employees. We try to keep this awesome work environment, but you're gonna get bad apples. And unfortunately, the way the world is this day, people want a free lunch. You know, us getting sued for things that it's just not right. Those will make you kind of question, like, do I even want to be in this? You know, you're taking the fun out of it. I want to design cool bumpers. You know, pay you a fair wage. You're loving this. You said it's the best place you ever worked. Why is this guy suing me? So you got stuff like that, but you got to keep your chin up and know that that's a bump in the road. And there's no way they're taking us down with them. So we'll be better for it. You know, learn those lessons, improve, tighten the ship up, and then move on. To this day, we have a lot of competition. You know, you see it at the SEMA show. Like, we made bumpers sexy. There wasn't a bumper industry like this until they kept seeing cover truck after cover truck after cover truck. And, you know, say you're a suspension company and you've got this ridiculous $150,000 build. You see it at the newsstand at the airport and you're like, may as well be a Fab Fours truck. Because that's the only thing you can see on it. We're the defining feature. And I think that started to weigh on folks. And unfortunately, with the barrier to entry being so low, everyone's like, shit, why don't we make a Super Duty bumper? But there's a big difference between making some bumpers and being a bumper company. So the complexity that comes into this and keeping up with new applications as they're launched and having the breadth of part numbers and SKU counts we do so we can be a single source to a major wholesale distributor, that's a remaining differentiator that we even established quite early in our time. And you'll see our competitors ebb and flow, I think, when they take their eye off of the quality on time type focus. And you'll see the hate online and you're taking people's money, not shipping. Those things will catch up with you. We've been straight and narrow from day one and then just had momentum at our back. So I don't really get hung up on them too much. Sometimes I try to get my digs in my little videos just for fun, hoping the owner is watching, because I'd say it to their face too if we ever bump into each other at a show. But all told, competition is good. You can only look like the best if it's compared to something.
When was it that you guys were able to accomplish the Inc.
500 was probably, I think it might have been 08.
And what does Inc. 500?
So that's Inc. magazine, and that's the 500 fastest growing private companies in America.
Oh, fastest growing.
Yeah. So fastest growing is a percent growth measured over 3 years. And I think at that time we were like 490% growth rate or something.
And did you have to apply for that, or they reached?
Yeah, you apply. You apply each year. And so later we were Inc. 5000, which is the same thing, just a bigger list. Top 5,000 fastest growing companies in America. We got that a couple of times.
Wow.
But then the Charlotte Fast 50 and some of those other ones are more local. And they're fun because then you can network with some of the other business owners in town. You go there.
And if you could go back and change the way you did things, what would you change? Maybe location? Did you...
Man, that is a tough one. When things are so good like they are, it's kind of hard to say because you got the butterfly effect. You know, if I picked one thing in it, what would change? There's a little piece of me that still wishes I could have mastered an outsource model. As much as I love having the assets, and I do mean domestically at this point, but there was something about that. I've always been kind of a victim of our own success because when you grow that fast, you just bleed money and it takes a toll on the people, right? I mean, it's hard to be successful when you're chasing a moving goalpost, which is what's happening when you're growing fast all the time. It's rare to be like, yes, oh, we crushed it this quarter. Because if you're growing fast, basically your backlog's high, so your lead time's long, so no matter how much you can make, you feel behind. And so from an operations standpoint, it's like you're letting everybody down month after month, quarter after quarter. When, oh, by the way, we just grew 30% over last year. There's years we added $4 million in revenue. You'd think we'd be just killing it. Well, yeah, you are if you're like a freaking tech company and it was 20 dudes sitting on beanbags in a high rise. You had $4 million, you're just minting money. You had $4 million here, you had to add 30 operators, you know, get that many more leases on welding machines, bulk out this, add a second shift. Now you had a second shift supervisor, and so many complexities to where just burning on you to manage that growth. And so I've struggled, and that's where we're coming to this now. It's like, what do you want? What do you want, Higs, out of this thing? Where is it going now? And to me, we've just hit a pace that I didn't know was going to happen, but now you feel it and go, I think we're there. You know, we've got the critical mass to do whatever we want to do. That is so liberating to where, you know, right now I could tell Jennifer, you know, buy a 2020 F450 for test fits and it'll be here tomorrow. Like, no problem. We've got an $800,000 line of credit just for buying cars. We've got hundreds of thousands open on it. They can do that. They'll buy it. It'll be delivered. And then I can go to Josiah and say, we're going to make another version of the Grumper. And here's what it's going to have. And we'd all get excited. And 10 days later, it'd be on that truck.
10 days later, you guys are able to...
10 days later. And then 2 months later, you're going to see it on Facebook on Dubs Magazine. And it's like, what more could you ask for? Like, we have it now. So in a way, we've arrived. It's not like, you know, it's not a $100 million business, but I don't measure success in that anymore. Now it's about, you know, are we giving people opportunity here? Do we have the means that we need to stay number one, most innovative in our market? Yes. Do we have the best quality? Yes. We have the best, like, that's it. Those are all the new measures of success. Then we're here. So you can't get complacent, because I've always said if you're not growing, you're dying. So I'd rather be growing, but we need to grow at a modest pace now, given the scale of the whole thing, so that growth doesn't get in our way and undermine the value proposition that got us to where we are.
Incredible.
This guy's amazing.
Any more questions?
Yes. Sorry, I'm fascinated. As a business owner, do you feel like this administration, in terms of political, or the past administration, see you've been...
Oh, you're getting political now.
Yeah, I'm getting a little bit political. You don't have to like jab at anything, but I want to know, has that affected your business in a negative, positive? Like, how has current regulations, laws, stuff that's been implemented into the political environment affected you? Negative or positive? Go.
Well, we mostly stay out of politics because Democratic, Republican, cash is green, and it's good here. We'll take it. You want a bumper for your truck? I don't care who you're voting for. But one of the positives I can speak to the current administration, and you know, Trump caught a lot of flack for this in some of the economic strategy and sanctions and others with China and some of these trade wars that have had some negative implications on our farming or other. But I've had the pleasure of having Congressman Norman here at the building. I've had Senator Scott here at the building for just plant tours as constituents, and really smart, awesome leaders. I mean, those two guys, I can't speak for the rest of what you see on CNN. It's pretty irritating in Washington. But those are two legit dudes. You're like, that's a guy I could have a beer with. He gets it. And when you talk to them about the policy, I mean, I don't think anybody can relate to Trump from a, you know, that's a guy I want to follow. That's a good dude. Like, no. I don't get those warm fuzzies. But as they reinforce, like, the strategy is sound, and this is a long way of saying what's relevant to me in politics? IP. It pisses me off to have counterfeits coming from China of the Grumper. So the Grumper, which is our grill bumper combination for a Jeep, did not exist in the universe until it came out of my head onto a piece of paper. We invested all the energy to develop the part and build a brand and demand out in the market.
You're doing it out of plastic, right?
No, it's full steel, our fabricated Grumper.
Okay.
And after we've done that, we've taken all the wounds of developing it and getting it out there and building a whole market. Here comes the U-boxes and these other brands with a literal counterfeit. So some of the first ones even had our logo, and the mountain was just skinny on one side. But it's our logo, and so we were getting customer service calls like, hey, my things, whatever, like send us a picture, like, sorry bro, that's a counterfeit. I hope you didn't pay full price, because then you get the double, you know, shame on them if they bought a counterfeit. Some, unfortunately, shame on the shop who sold them a counterfeit at Fab Fours prices, saying you're getting a Fab Fours because they bought it off somebody's truck for pennies on the dollar. Either way, we can't defend that. I've got patents on it. We can't stop the import of these counterfeits. And you think, well, yeah, it's the government's job, right? They don't care about us. We're tiny. So the only thing that can combat something like that is a holistic focus on fair trade. And that was the fundamental of what, you don't catch that in the headlines because that doesn't sell magazines and newspapers. All you're getting is the, Trump goes off on China, farmers hurt, that's that. No, well, there's a middle ground. You've got to start somewhere. And that's what Senator Scott was so eloquently pointing out, if he could have given the speech here in our break room, just explaining it's a chess game. You have to start cinching this thing down from the outside if you're gonna get fair trade. Because right now we didn't have the means to apply pressure to those things. Because the only way it's gonna stop is if China stops it from leaving. Us stopping it from entering, too hard. They were telling me, oh, here's what you need. You need to go educate the customs and border entries at all the ports so they know what they're looking for. It's like, me? What? No, just a little bumper guy, man. It's a lot of revenue to us. And those are real American jobs lost every month to these counterfeit bumpers that are happening to this day. Both my brand and many other strong ones, Poison Spider, some of those brands, these same scumbags in Alibaba are basically making it accessible to jobbers to buy counterfeits and undermine the hard work that our aftermarket's doing. So as soon as you're successful and you got parts that are working, oh, the volume's there, now you're attracting that. And so
you're attracting the rats.
The rats, and the only way we can stop that is with basically trade deals and a more global reaching policy that stops counterfeits. Because pirating movies, that makes attention, right? That's hundreds of millions of dollars a year. So you see some of that enforcement. Copying a Fab Fours grumper, nah, not making the radar. So yes, we rely on our customers. You could say somebody that's gonna buy a counterfeit Louis Vuitton was never gonna buy a Louis Vuitton because they couldn't afford it. Well, same thing. If you're buying a knockoff grumper, you probably couldn't get a grumper anyways. So did I lose the sale? I'm not sure. I still like the guy for liking my dream. I'm just a little pissed at you for not paying for it. The only thing that funds those innovations is the sale of us converting steel into products. And if you're gonna say, hey, thanks for inventing that, but I'm gonna go and buy it here and save a couple $100. Come on, man. If we've learned anything, you don't need to prop up China. They don't have our backs, they don't have yours. Don't put it on your truck.
Damn, that was awesome, man. Well, Greg, thank you so much for having us here at your shop. It's been an honor. It's been a true inspiration, really.
Awesome.
And I'm really looking forward to seeing you out on the trails, seeing what that Tacoma can do.
That's gonna happen this year. We're gonna link up on the trail with this thing.
Let's do it, man. I'm really looking forward to it, and we're gonna get some butter shots this thing, and it's gonna be awesome.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Thanks a lot, man.
See ya.